Well, welcome to VillaRaw.com. I have in front of me Graham Hill. I'm Tim Nash. I'm from WolvesBite.com. So we've got a bit of a West Midlands rivalry going on here, and we're at in very much Wolves and Villa territory. Cannock. We're at the home of Cannock Chase Radio 94.0 FM. So thanks very much to them for lending us their studio. I'm here to ask Graham about all things Villa. He's already asked me about Wolves, so we'll be sharing our thoughts with you very shortly. Graham, welcome.
Hi, Tim.
Just like to say, what a great job Dean Smith has done since March. Incredible recovery from Villa, the way that they turned things around. Graham, what was the key?
I think I find it hard to believe that we're sitting here now talking about the Premier League when you saw the position Villa were in February, where really they looked as if they were heading for a season of mid-table obscurity, and the playoffs and certainly promotion seemed a long way off. The key, probably, if anybody asks one particular thing, it would have to be Jack Grealish, and I think he was inspirational in rebuilding that team into a unit that actually gelled and made it possible to win promotion. It's no coincidence that the 3 months that Jack Grealish was out of action with a bad shin injury, Villa didn't perform. They looked a shadow of the side that before Christmas actually looked capable of getting a top two place, but certainly the turnaround was Grealish. That game against Derby County, where he scored one of the goals of the season, and they demolished one of their promotion rivals at Villa Park and didn't look back because they won 10 games in a row, which if you're going to put that kind of run together at the end of the season, then you really do put yourself in the frame for promotion.
I mean, you talk about Grealish there, Graham, and what sort of you touched on the kind of effect he has, but how is he kind of, what sort of effect has he had on the players around him, and how have they reacted?
I think Jack, from what I gather, is the kind of guy who just brings people together. From what I'm told, everybody likes Jack. It's he's the guy who's the popular man down there, and the fact that Dean Smith made him captain, which was completely unexpected, turned out to be a masterstroke. A great bit of man management there from the Villa manager. Suddenly, Grealish, whose reputation a few years ago was a little bit maybe as something of a playboy, suddenly he had all this added responsibility, and he lapped it up. I mean, he's a Villa fan. He was captain of Villa, playing in front of the Holt End. And just the very fact that he came back and was playing brilliantly just seemed to inspire everybody else. And then you get people like John McGinn, who play to the maximum of their capability. You get other players in the side, Tyrone Mings, Jed Steer, responding just as a matter of course. And I don't think Tyrone Mings' contribution can be underestimated. He was kind of a captain without an armband in many ways, but certainly Grealish was the man who sparked it all off.
I mean, you talk about Grealish, and of course, Villa have got players who can now excel at the higher level. Transfer record broken on Thursday, Graham. I mean, just what a contrast from 12 months ago when Villa were potentially heading for administration and maybe could have been in League One now.
It's incredible what a difference. I mean, had Villa not been taken over by Wes Edens and Nassef Sawiris, it's not impossible to say that we could have been looking at a Portsmouth or a Bolton Wanderers, where the club was in danger of going into administration. A lot of money had been staked on Villa winning promotion 12 months ago. They lost the playoff final, of course, and the consequences were huge. I don't think they would have been as huge this year, in nothing like that, because of the new backing. But what we've got now is a side that has been promoted with two billionaires at the helm, and now they're starting to flex their financial muscle a little bit. So, I mean, certainly £22 million for for a Brazilian striker is something that has been unheard of for quite some time, really. The previous transfer record was around 18 million for Darren Bent. That was in 2011. So we've surpassed that. And Wesley, as he likes to be known, I believe is going to be an untried, an unknown prospect at the moment. But the fact that this kind of money is being spent on players who have clearly been targeted by the club, it can only be encouraging, and it's very exciting.
Well, that brings me to nicely to another question, Graham. I mean, just how rich are these owners? And how far can they take Villa? And really, what sort of signings can we expect between now and August?
Well, I think if you Google both of these guys, you'll see the strength of their wealth. The money they've got is quite frightening, I think. Wes Edens is the owner of the Milwaukee Bucks NBA team, and we all know American sport is very lucrative, and the fact that he can run that team and also be a co-owner of Aston Villa suggests, I don't want to predict too much, but I would imagine that there'll be quite a lot of spending going on between now and the end of the next 10 years, because if you look at some of the comments that were made after the playoff final, I think Wes Edens was quoted as saying, we're not going there just to make up the numbers, we're there to compete. And these guys, they're not Villa fans, they want a return for their money, so they want the team to do well. If they do well, they do well financially. It's a business proposition. If they pump money into the club, and they've pumped in a lot of money so far, don't want to see something back for it. So I think some of the fans were a little bit wary of American ownership. In the case of Wes Edens, certainly the Randy Lerner years weren't good for Villa. But I think this is a very different proposition, and I can see Villa going from strength to strength. It might not be next season. Next season might be one of consolidation, because there is a lot of competition. There are a lot of rich owners, certainly at Wolves, certainly at Leicester. And Villa are just going to have to find their feet. But after next season, I think they can only make progress.
So how do you think Villa are going to get on in the Premier League?
I think it's a season of consolidation. I mean, it all depends on how the squad gels, because this isn't like Wolves. Wolves went up with almost like a ready-made squad. Villa have lost a lot of players. They've released a lot. Some of them have gone back on loan to their parent clubs, like Tammy Abraham. Difficult to see him coming back, I would have thought. So there's a major rebuild going on as we speak. I believe that Dean Smith is looking for players in every position, and it could well be Villa spend £100 million and more this summer, which, as we've just said, is crazy considering the position they were in 12 months ago. But certainly the new owner's mean business. Dean Smith probably feels like a kid in a sweet shop at the moment with the money he's got to spend, but I don't expect him to make any rash signings. I don't expect him to go crazy with the money. He's a very measured, down-to-earth sort of guy, and I expect him to stay the same in the Premier League. But I'd be happy with mid-table. I don't know about the majority of the supporters, but as long as they can steer clear of relegation, I'd be pretty happy.
That seems a more sensible sort of take. I know fans on social media seem there's talk of Villa challenging for a Champions League spot and things like that. Do you feel that's rather fanciful at this stage?
At the moment, I do think the top six is vulnerable. I think there's a couple of sides in there whose grasp on that top six has slipped a little bit over the last couple of years, and just maybe the time is right for a team to emerge from the pack and challenge for European places. We've seen it. We've seen Wolves do that. We've seen Leicester win the Premier League title. I just think probably it's time to sort of take a step back and look at the bigger picture. 12 months ago, the club were had real financial problems. They've now gone, and I think it's a gradual rebuild. next season might be a little bit too early. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to see Villa gate crash the top four, but I think it might be a slow process, and next season could be one of just getting Villa's getting a foothold back in the top flight, which they had for several years.
John McGinn, of course, has compared Villa to Wolves and hopes to emulate them. I mean, do you think that's possible?
I think Wolves will have the advantage of quite a successful season under their belt. They'll be hitting the ground running for next season already. I think eventually Villa can match up to that, as we've just spoken about, with the wealth behind them and the buying power in the ranks, and the more players that come to Villa, the better quality they'll attract over the years. I think eventually Villa will give Wolves a run for their money. It might not be next season, but I can see the pair of them certainly challenging for the top six over the next 5 years.
I mean, you would expect. I mean, Villa traditionally, have been, one of the bigger clubs in the country, haven't they? You would expect Villa to sort of challenge that top six at some point.
At some point, let's not forget that under Martin O'Neill, they made the top six 3 years on the trot, and that's only a decade ago. I know a decade's a long time in the Premier League.
And that was with reasonable investment as well.
That was with Randy Lerner's investment, which became increasingly less and less as the owner became less interested. But and certainly the landscape has changed since then. But Villa are traditionally a top six side, and if you go back 10 years, go back 20 years, they were always challenging. So that has to be the aim again.
And of course, a lot of the success will be attributed to the manager Dean Smith for the way he's turned things around. This is his first time in the Premier League, of course, Graham. I mean, how do you see him getting on in the top flight?
I think he could be one of the most exciting managers around. I mean, he's a very understated guy, as we've said. He keeps his feet on the ground. He doesn't get too excited when things are going well, and takes stock of things when things are going badly. The pressure will be different. The spotlight will be on him, and we all know how that can get to owners and managers and players. But I just get the feeling that Dean thinks this is what he was here to do. I think he would have ambitions about getting into the Premier League at some stage. This is his big chance. And I think some people suggested a few months ago, when Villa weren't doing so well, that Villa was too big for him. Well, he's proved everybody wrong there. So if anybody thinks the Premier League is too big for Dean Smith, they might have to eat those words again, I think.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Graham.
Thanks, Tim.
It's been fantastic to share the experience. I think first video for both Villa Raw and for wolvesbite.com. That's Raw ROAR. Wolves Bite BITE. So tune into those. Thanks again to Cannock Chase Radio 94.0 FM. And please tune in. And thanks very much, Graham.
Thanks, Tim.